Michigan has been a crossroads, a battlefield, a trading center, an industrial powerhouse, and occasionally a spectacular warning about what happens when human beings become convinced they know exactly what they are doing. Michigan has seen a lot. Its history stretches far beyond automobiles, factories, and Detroit. Long before Europeans arrived, the Great Lakes region was home to indigenous peoples whose communities had developed over thousands of years. Among them were the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi. Together, these Anishinaabe peoples built communities around the region's forests, rivers, lakes, and seasonal rhythms. They hunted, they fished, they farmed. They traded across enormous distances. Their political systems, family networks, religious traditions, and economic relationships shaped the Great Lakes world generations before Michigan existed on anybody's map. Then Europeans arrived. The French came first in large numbers. They brought missionaries, soldiers, traders, metal goods, firearms, Catholicism, European diseases, and a tremendous appetite for beaver pelts. The fur trade tied Michigan to an international economy stretching from native villages along the Great Lakes to markets in Europe. French traders depended heavily on relationships with native communities. Sometimes those relationships created cooperation. Sometimes they created conflict. Frequently, they created both. In the year 1701, Antoine de la Motte Cadillac established Fort Pontchartrain du Détroit. Detroit was born. The location made perfect sense. Control the narrow waterway between Lake Erie and Lake Huron, and you controlled one of the most important highways in the Great Lakes. Nobody needed asphalt. The lakes were the highways. Canoes were the trucks. Beaver pelts were money. France lost control of the region to Britain after the French and Indian War. The American Revolution followed. Then came the War of 1812, when that arrangement suddenly became much less certain. Detroit surrendered to the British in 1812. American forces eventually fought their way back into the region. On Lake Erie, Commodore Oliver Hazard Perry defeated a British fleet in 1813 and sent one of the most famous messages in American military history. "We have met the enemy, and they are ours." For civilians living around the Great Lakes, the war brought shortages, destruction, uncertainty, and violence. During the 19th century, Michigan changed again. Forests fell. Copper came out of the Upper Peninsula. Iron followed. Ships hauled raw materials across the Great Lakes. Railroads pushed across the state. Towns appeared almost overnight. Some disappeared nearly as quickly. Then Detroit discovered the automobile, and everything changed. Henry Ford and other manufacturers transformed Michigan into the beating heart of a new industrial world. Factories grew enormous. Assembly lines turned automobile production into a carefully timed mechanical ballet. Cars rolled off the line faster and cheaper than anyone had imagined possible. Detroit became famous around the planet. People poured into Michigan looking for work. Immigrants arrived from Europe. Black Americans came north during the Great Migration. Workers arrived from Appalachia and across the country. Factories filled. Neighborhoods expanded. Fortunes were made. Industrial growth brought dangerous working conditions, labor disputes, racial conflict, pollution, and enormous gaps between factory owners and the workers who punched the clock inside them. Workers organized. Companies fought back. The struggle between organized labor and corporate power helped turn Michigan into one of the most important battlegrounds in American labor history. Then the industrial machine began to sputter. Factories closed. Jobs disappeared. Families left. Detroit lost more than 1 million residents from its 20th century peak. Entire neighborhoods changed. Buildings stood empty. The city that had once helped put the world on wheels found itself trying to survive the wreckage left behind. Once a center of General Motors, the city endured factory closures, population loss, unemployment, and declining tax revenue. Then came the Flint water crisis. Residents turned on their faucets and received contaminated water. Children were exposed to lead. A basic government responsibility became an international scandal. And suddenly Michigan's history connected once again with something much larger: industrial decline, race, poverty, infrastructure, environmental damage, government failure. These are Michigan stories, but they are also American stories, and increasingly they are global stories. That is what makes Michigan worth studying. This state provides a remarkably compact version of several centuries of human history: indigenous civilizations, European empires, war, migration, industrialization, labor, racial conflict, technological revolution, environmental damage, economic collapse, reinvention. Michigan has experienced all of them, sometimes more than once. The Great Lakes have watched the entire performance. They were here before the forts, before the factories, before the assembly lines, before somebody decided a car needed a cup holder. They will probably be here long after us as well. So when we study Michigan history, we do more than memorize governors, battles, factories, and dates. We are watching people collide with geography, technology, money, power, and one another. Sometimes they build extraordinary things. Sometimes they make an absolute mess. Usually they do a little of both. Welcome to Michigan History.